Hey, this is Mo Lunsford at Union Grove Lumber Studios.
And this is the Shed Geek. We want to welcome you to today's episode. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek podcast. And we're doing mobile today instead of in person. And it's kind of fun. I'm excited about today's guest, Chris Catania. Chris, I'm going to do like this little demo you got here or whatever, this little informational here. Chris is an award-winning enterprise community building expert for more than 20 years. He's helped leaders build community-driven organizations that leverage the power of community and collaboration to deepen trust, increase loyalty, build better products, drive engagement, save millions, and grow top-line revenue. As a speaker, consultant, and strategist, he has helped audiences transform disengaged customers into loyal and passionate brand advocates. I love that. He has led clients to create a digital workplace that connects and builds strong employee relationships and networks. And today he speaks and leads workshops to empower leaders to leverage community as a strategic asset in the workplace and competitive advantage in the marketplace, and is the author of the upcoming book due out this summer 2023, the Community First Podcast. So welcome to the Shed Geek Podcast, Chris. I don't know if I left anything out, but maybe you can add to that, probably many other accolades, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Shannon. And this is it's great to be here, and yeah, super excited to to talk community first with you and the community here. And just a note about the book, it's forthcoming. It's not released yet, but will be soon. So, but other than that, it's I think that's all you need to know about me. It's great to be here.
That's perfect, man. I appreciate you being here with me today. That means a lot. And we're a little ways apart. You're out in California, I think, Southern California. So I think you're winning the battle of the weather today versus me here in Illinois, but that's okay. Chris,
that's all right. That's all right.
Tell me just, do you care? I don't mind getting into whatever you want to share what you please. I like real conversations. So if it's something that doesn't work, that's why we have editing, right? But tell me a little bit about who you are, your background, maybe how you got to here and a focus on community.
Yeah. My journey has been kind of interesting. I mean, I go back to my origin story with why I believe in community and all that goes back to live music and my passion for loving, the concert experience. And I first really felt the power of community when I was at a concert in Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago. I grew up in Illinois. So I was at this show, and I was a music journalist at the time, covering live music. I was interviewing the artist for the show, and I came out back into the crowd, and concert got moving, and it was just an amazing experience. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences at concerts, but I always, in that moment particular, I felt really connected, to people. I talked to fans after the show. It actually started me on this journey to create my very first community back then was for concert fans, and to really understand like why we were connected. What was that feeling I was feeling about, the sense of belonging and wanting to know, what the music was doing to all of us. And then I went on this journey where I was, continuing to explore in that connection of community and belonging and like what was happening inside my mind and my heart. And then I had another aha moment where I was like, I was working for ad agency, and I was as a copywriter, and I was the only person there who was using online communities and really familiar with them and how to use them for business. So we were getting a lot of different clients and customers, and an increasing amount of brands wanting to know how to use this technology, online technology, and the concepts of community in the context of business. So I started doing that, and then I had a aha moment. I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff, because I started working with other clients. I started working within large enterprises, and there was still a misconception and a kind of like a shared value element like left on the table, because a lot of leaders weren't really understanding what community was, and then what it meant and how to use it within their business, and so I was trying to figure out a way to communicate that, because I felt very passionately about it. I had experienced it, and I was like, man, customers are going to want this. You're going to need it to collaborate with employees to get innovation going within the company. You're going to need to co-create with customers outside. You can save money, make money with community if you use it right. So I was trying to figure that out, and then I eventually, came up with a way, to explain the value of community to leaders, and several years later, here I am, being able to do that, and to take leaders really on a journey that begins with mindset. So you kind of have to understand like what community is. And you have to understand that it really does, in many cases, this is kind of where it gets tricky for leaders, is it goes against some traditional mindset with management, and some of the ideas of how customers should be interacted with, or the control a company might have over its brand, and then internally, how much you want to control what employees say to each other, how they communicate, and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been passionate helping leaders get over that, and helping them understand, if they do want to connect and they do want to tap into this ability to create community and belonging, that there's a lot of benefits to that. It's competitive advantage. They're more agile, in the marketplace. They're so much more connected with their customers. They're more connected with their own staff. In that way. So it's really, then the other thing that really led me on my journey is that, when I was at that concert, and really any community I've ever built for a company, we're really taking advantage and really meeting a need in the world where there's a loneliness epidemic happening. Even with all this technology that we have, we really haven't been this disconnected, or people haven't felt this alone in quite some time, or really in the history of the human existence, right? It's kind of, there's lots of studies that show that. So that's why I love doing this, because it's not just about, let's make a company or a product, right? You're really, when you're building community, you have an impact in your own mind as a leader, and then you impact your team, you impact your organization, your customers, the marketplace, and then the world. So that's kind of my origin story, and that's, if you can't guess yet, that's why I'm passionate about this stuff, and I want to help leaders, understand how to use it and really get the most out of it for their companies and staff.
No, I love it. First question I've got is like, what concert was it? I'm so curious.
Oh, what concert was it? Yes, it was an artist whose name was Saul Williams, and it was in this small venue in Chicago. I'm a big fan of going to smaller venues. Can be more intimate sometimes. So it was Saul Williams, and it was right around, he had an album that was coming out. So I was there to interview him and have my moment.
No, I think that's awesome. The reason I asked that question is kind of twofold. I'm looking at, I don't know how or what kind of legs it has right now, but there's a opportunity to get into sort of like a music related podcast hosting situation for myself. So I feel like it's a good place to start already. It's just because I'm curious. I love music. I say some people are meant to play it, some people are meant to enjoy it, and I definitely cannot play it. So I enjoy it the most I can.
I'm right there with you. I don't play music, full disclosure. I love listening to it and writing about it, and kind of understanding why it makes me feel and makes us feel the way it does. And that's always been my entry point into it. And that's the other thing I forgot to mention too with my origin story is that from when I had that moment at that concert to what I do now, about 10 years ago, I started a music podcast with my wife, and we actually explore all the connections between live music, community, and psychology. So that's always been my experimental kind of laboratory, where I've taken a lot of those learnings out of that show and that community that I built, and be able to leverage those insights, for businesses, and how do you apply those experiences. So live music is always just kind of, it's permeated and it flows through all aspects of what I do.
That's great. And
so
I had no idea about that either too. So this is really cool. This is, For me, faith is one of the big things. I know, I don't know if you've listened to any of the shows, but faith is a big thing to me. So like, it's always interesting for me to see the nuance, and what I feel like is like how those connections get made. And I feel like there's a larger purpose to those, but that's really cool. I just didn't expect that you would say that. So it kind of caught me off guard, and that's awesome. One of my favorite quotes from, about music is, when life is going good, you hear the music, but when life is going bad, you understand the lyrics. And that's just nice. One that I've used for a long time. And people relate to that because they understand that music changes your mood. It has the opportunity to do so many things. It can turn you into turn a bad mood into a good mood real quickly just by listening. So the psychology aspect too, it's super interesting.
The shed industry is comprised of a diverse group of companies, but also a diverse group of shed sellers. Proven sales processes are the backbone of successful businesses, and their effectiveness cannot be overstated. At Shed U, our processes provide a structured framework that guides the shed sales professional through the various stages of the sales cycle, ensuring consistency and efficiency. By following a proven process, shed salespeople can better understand their customers' needs, build trust, and tailor their approach accordingly. Additionally, these processes are developed based on years of experience and extensive market research, incorporating best practices and strategies that have yielded positive results. Your Sheducation from Shed University will not only minimize guesswork, but also maximize the chances of closing deals and achieving sales targets. Our proven shed sales process will empower you or your shed sales team to work smarter, not harder, and lead to increased productivity, customer satisfaction, and business growth. It's time to take the guesswork out of your shed sales process. Invest in yourself and your team when you attend class at Shed University. Don't be tardy. Book your ticket now at sheduniversity.com for this year's session on January 23rd and 24th at the Knoxville Convention Center, just before the GSCB show. At Shed University, class is now in session.
We could do like one of those Joe Rogan 3-hour podcasts, me and you. I promise you we could. I feel like it would go real simple. Community, community first. Community comes from communication. One of the podcasts I love to listen to is these guys called the Communication Guys, because I'm passionate about communication. I believe that good and effective communication can change the world. So to me, community is a derivative of, communication, trying to effectively communicate. If me and you were in person today, we'd know more about each other through how we dress, what we do, other conversations that happen outside of just the podcast. So this becomes, to me, a secondary line of communication, and a third line would be the phone, and then so on and so forth, and texting. And you were talking about the loneliness epidemic. I see Facebook posts all the time now, or just social media posts in general, that talk about, you didn't have to call me, you could have just texted me, and like how we're choosing to communicate. And when you're talking about like the loneliness epidemic, you're just hitting on all the things that are super interesting to me that we haven't even got into the bulk of what we want to talk about yet. And that's just, all of those things are interesting. Give me some of your thoughts on that loneliness epidemic. That's a real thing. And like, I know we didn't talk about that necessarily initially, but what's like your 2-minute, 3-minute thought pattern on just like the loneliness epidemic currently? And
I think it's, the idea is that, I guess to go back, when I even go further back, I always think that, from my own faith, I believe, that we're created to be together, like community, right? Like all these things that are in the Bible, and like it's there, it's clear. Not everybody might accept, that's the case, but that for me, that's what I believe. So it even goes back further than the concert experience that I had, right? Like I've always, like, I love being with people. I'm an introvert who loves to be extroverted, but when I don't feel right, it's usually because I haven't connected with somebody. I haven't connected with a group of people in a while, right? Or, I love that. So when I think of the loneliness epidemic, I think of the idea that we have all this technology, we have all these things that like seem like they're helping us, they're helping us do these different things or move forward or progress. But you really have to ask yourself, are they really helping me connect with people? And I think if people are honest with themselves in some cases, that, is it real? They have to ask themselves the question, is this real, genuine connection? And what does that mean for each individual person? Like, I know what that means for me, just looking at what I value. And, if I'm meeting somebody in an elevator or if I'm hanging out with my family members, like I'm always trying to connect with somebody in some way, over something, whether it's you and I just talking about music there, or, hey, I'm from this region of the country, or, hey, I love this food. Like there's a connection. But for some reason, we've become really reliant on technology to give this kind of facade, of connection, that we think we know somebody, and then that kind of meets a need that we think we meet it. But I mean, we could have a whole discussion on that, but it's been documented that the loneliness epidemic is impacting us, and we're not as connected as we think we are, with technology, and we're not always intentional about that. I've moved from different regions of the country, and I don't know what it is, if it's just my upbringing or what, but I've also often been told, since I moved from the Midwest, Chicago, out to California, is that it was strange in the way that I approached, like, meeting people, neighbors, and wanting to bring people together, have block parties, like all these different things, and like look people in the eye when you see them and talk with them. I mean, those are just things I do naturally, and I love doing them. But I think some people are uncomfortable with that. They rather just go right into their driveway or go out and not give you eye contact on when you're seeing them, things like that. So, but I think technology plays a role in that. And if there's anything that I can do to stop that by building community and making it a priority and making a genuine, community, and kind of and intentionally fight against this loneliness epidemic and talk about it and ask people, or, something as simple as making sure my neighbors are okay, or, which happened a lot during COVID. I think there's some pluses that we could talk about with that. But I think we are certainly less connected than we think we are. And the work that I do is driven by the mission, and my purpose is to help not only companies, but we're all people, right? You don't have companies without people. You don't have customer bases and followings and audiences without people. And you don't have people without their hearts and their minds and who they are. So it's work that I'm really proud of, and hopefully it's making an impact on this epidemic, because it's real. And there's a whole mental health component. We could probably go down a different path with that impacts that too. But that's a whole other thing I'm passionate about as well. But anything I can do to build community in any way, whether that's for an enterprise or entrepreneur or a small business, all that kind of stuff is definitely something I want to do.
For someone who I haven't talked with much or had built a lot of relationship with, some of my guests that are like deep in the pits of the shed industry, whether they're a builder or a hauler or a manufacturer, salesperson of some kind, product or service provider or whatever. Like, you're quickly becoming one of my favorite people to speak to already. And I could see your passion in it. And what I probably appreciate it the most about it is where our passions meet for the idea of community. But I struggle with, we're coming up on 200 episodes. In March, I'll be starting my 4th year of podcasting. But beyond that, I've worked in this industry and done rep work for different companies, finance related or whatever, just, been in front of a lot of people in the shed industry, and that's the core audience. And that's a lot of the base of who listens for the most part. But I get kind of, it's so weird, for me, Chris, because like I get kind of self-conscious when I can't, people don't know this about me as well. I'm an introvert, and I was very introverted as a young child and almost kind of shy. And then I eventually broke out of that to more of a, I guess what people might call normal. stage. And then I went to work in customer service, and then I really moved out of it big time. I worked for a casino. Casinos are big on customer service. So you had to get out of your shell really quick, and they would literally put you in what they called a spotlight, and they would have you, focus intense customer service on the customer and get graded because of that. So like it made me really start to become super comfortable with talking to people. And because of that, I eventually, I'm big on like these little cliches, right? And I mentioned it recently, if speaking is silver, then listening is gold, So like if I speak a lot because I listen a lot, I do. I spend a ton of time taking in either podcast or reading books or audiobooks or music or something like that. And it all just creates that thought that turns me into that extrovert that allows me to get in my goofy little suit here and become the shed geek and talk to people. But I say that effective communication can end wars. It can end hunger. Effective communication can do a lot for what we do, but I don't think that we communicate well as people, generally speaking. And I guarantee you that social media and technology are a good example of that. We've seen the social dilemma. We've seen kind of like people's thoughts on social media, people who've even come out of those companies who say, man, I'm not sure that this is increasing communication. People are fishing for likes, fishing for comments, shares, basing their value based upon how many people interact with them socially. Hey, they're going on vacation. I didn't go on vacation. Well, typically people are only going to show you the best on social media. And then some people are like, well, of course I'm only going to show you the best. I don't want to show you the worst of my life. And then others are like, no, show it all if you're going to show, so there's like there's all this talk. And these are usually car rides when I'm with somebody for 2 to 3 hours that we just discuss at great length. I don't know if that's shed related, but I know it's people related. I know people who are in the shed industry, they're people too. And matter of fact, there's a big part of the shed industry, the plane community, that literally identify themselves as plane community, in quotations, community. And they're listeners even to this podcast that use a call-in line to listen. They, abstain from a certain amount of technology, but then there's also a part of them that wants to, I would assume, be familiar with what's happening, what's going on in the industry. And to do that, they'll, maybe listen to the podcast, read a trade magazine or something like that. What's your message? And maybe you want to take it from the top. Maybe we can just ask questions, but maybe we go through your book, or I want you to be the guest. So you share whatever's on your mind. I'll ask a direct question if you want, but I'd just ask you to maybe ad lib on your thoughts on community. You do such a good job. I want you to have the mic.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I know you bring up a real good topic about, there's a dichotomy, there's like a paradigm shift going on, but there's also the struggle back and forth about, we have this amazing, the technology that, it has improved the world. It's allowed information to flow faster and, all these different things. It's certainly added value. I mean, jobs and all these different things, but then there's this dark side to it, and it has caused pain and has made us more separated. So, I think it's interesting to look at it, and you can really say that about a lot of different things that have come out through human history. I mean, I guess we're getting deep here, on that. But when you think about any kind of tool, right? Whether it's I mean, I don't know how specific we want to get, but when I think about community, and in most cases, I'm speaking about like the ability to use online technology, like online forums, or online groups, to, in the context of business, to help leaders develop relationships with their customers, or to increase brand or to get better product ideas, things like that. But I think there certainly is, a need to do that in the marketplace. If you're trying to run a business, there's certainly advantages to that. But then there's the dark side of that too, where, you can launch this community, and a lot of leaders do this. They launch a community and they don't understand the long game that's involved with that, the relationship part. They expect super fast wins. They want to see the ROI super fast, and, they get upset, or they might, the expectations are a little off. And then we just remind and say, well, relationships take time. and that's essentially what you're doing if you're going to engage in an online community with a customer or with a staff, or use it in some way within a business, is that mostly you're building a relationship. You're using it to build trust. You're meeting a need, answering somebody's question, or what have you. So I always see the online community, or community in general, as something that, it's good in, innately, but it can certainly be used for wrong, right? I mean, and there's lots of examples of this online, where there's communities of people who are doing, evil things, they're doing bad things, unfortunately, right, in different ways. And I've led communities where some people have come in and wanted to do things, and we have guidelines to make sure that everybody is safe, to make sure the community is safe, content can be trusted, all that kind of stuff. So I think community is just like anything else, in that it has potential to do good, and it has potential to do bad, unfortunately. And that's just kind of how our world is, I guess, in that aspect. But I like to focus on the good, obviously, and be able to look at, like, what can we do? What can we do as leaders to connect with our audiences, build better companies, help our staff feel more connected. And if you're a business in a community, if you're intent on building an online or a community driven company, you're going to have a positive impact in the community that you're doing business in. Like that's a natural offset, of that, and then it just kind of goes from, goes on from there.
It's kind of how this podcast started, was going around from one place to the next and sort of feeling like I saw the vulnerability of the industry not being connected, or just other opportunities to connect. I'm not saying that there was no efforts put forward, but and I kind of thought, well, I don't know, like, I've listened to tons of, like I said, audiobooks, talk radio. I love watching documentaries for educational purposes now. I don't really entertain myself too much with fiction. I do some, but not near as much as I used to. Because like almost everything is now educational based. You talked about the Bible earlier. James 1:5 says, any person who lacks knowledge, let him ask. Like, knowledge gives you a better opportunity to make a decision. You know what I mean? Like, the more knowledge you have, the better decision you can make. So like, I'm a fan of education. That's even kind of why I started. It started with no opportunity. Like, the opportunities have come since, right? I didn't know that the opportunities would be in existence because of something that I was wanting to do that was just sort of like what I enjoyed. I enjoyed talking to people, and a lot of them were saying, well, what's happening over here or there or whatever? And it's like, man, why can't you get all these people together and they can just like talk? And like, so, but now, because we're in a business, we're not just in the world, and we're neighbors where we don't compete in something. We're specifically in the same community of business as well.
Have you ever had a customer ask you about how to supply power to their shed? Do you sell electrical kits as an upsell for your sheds currently? Do you want an easy, no-hassle option to offer for your customers when they want to add electric to their sheds? Check out EcoEthics Solar. EcoEthics Solar is looking for shed manufacturers and shed dealers who want to be able to provide a solar electric option to their line of sheds. With EcoEthics Solar, you can purchase the SunSaver, a solar product specifically designed with the shed owner in mind. Want to offer a larger product that can operate a full tiny home? At EcoEthics Solar, they have the necessary product, training, and capacity to meet your customers' needs. Installation for the SunSaver is simple and takes just 45 minutes. You can even install it right there in your sales lot or at the manufacturing facility. EcoEthics Solar even provides hands-on in-person training if necessary. Plus, they will provide you with video tutorials and handouts with specific installation instructions that keeps adding a solar-powered electrical system to your shed fast and simple. In many cases, the end user can even perform the installation once the shed is delivered to their home. If you are interested in purchasing a unit for display and then drop shipping your orders, or even ordering multiple units to have available as you build, contact my friends at EcoEthics Solar at 336-250-1284 or email sales@ecoethicsolar.com.
So now we talk about competition, and where does competition become a good thing because it sharpens you and makes you better. So what's your thoughts on collaboration versus competition? Like, I don't want to put any limits on it. I just want you to give your raw thoughts that come to mind, especially without having an expert position in the shed industry and like this, you know what I mean? This grand knowledge of the shed industry. How do you see competition versus collaboration?
Are you asking about like how you engage customers in that, or the value of building community as a competitive advantage?
I think
because
I think building community is collaboration's the buzzword right now, right? So like we can do better by working together, but then the question in my mind becomes, at what point is competition and maintaining your like core competencies better, and like saying, hey, this is who we are. We can't engage in this particular aspect of collaboration because it removes our competitive advantage, so to speak, or whatever. So like, and what effect does that have on relationship? You know, like that's what I see in this business a lot, is like people are attempting to collaborate, but it's like, geez, like you're kind of like overshadowing now my main objectives as we begin to collaborate. Yeah. So how do I maintain autonomy from that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I totally understand that, because it is complex, right? I think that, again, just like any kind of relationship you're going to engage in, you know, humans are complex, thus relationships are going to be complex, thus community building is going to be complex. And you're a community builder, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but everything that you were just describing is somebody who builds, is building community. And that's awesome that you're doing that, what you've been doing with this podcast and your work. So, but when it comes to like competition, I think that, you know, there's certainly an advantage and there's a risk, right? And you have to understand what the risks and rewards are with doing that. And the way I always lay it out for leaders, you know, when we're going through this thing, right? Because I've led leaders where they're, you know, they don't want to do the online community because they're afraid customers might say something that they don't agree with, you know, or they might be critical of the product, you know. And then my answer to that is always, well, customers are going to go say that anywhere, you know, and they're gonna say what they're gonna say, right? Well, why not create a place that is safe, that is transparent and open and welcoming of that, just like you would do in a relationship, right? If you want to allow someone to begin to trust you, you do what you were just talking about earlier, right? You listen first, you know, and that's what I always suggest. And you know, if a leader is struggling with why they should have community in that aspect, it's always just go back to the human elements of basic communication. And what community is just like that basic communication at scale. And you're doing that from, you know, not just one to many, but many to many. And you're managing that all the time, right? And doing that. So if you're engaging in that way, then, you know, you're building trust and you're building all these different things and you're building these relationships with customers, you know, then you're building loyalty, right? You're building all these things that you want to build with your customers, and they're more likely in those situations to want to work with you, to want to partner with you, purchase from you, and remain loyal in that, you know, in that way. So when you start to look at it that way, I've had a lot of, you know, leaders in that situation where they go, oh, okay, well, doesn't seem as risky, you know, to put ourselves out there. And I know the other thing too is that a lot of the communities that I've worked with in different capacities, ones that are public, you know, that you could be searchable and you can kind of see what customers are saying, what staff is saying back and forth, and you can see that. And I think that there's a huge value in prospective customers who might be considering your competitors, looking at how you engage with customers in a community. It gives them a chance to kind of see who you are as a company and if they want to work with you, you know, and they see you answering questions. They see you, you know, taking your ideas from your customers and putting them back into the products and all these different things. Then you increase your chances of bringing in new business. And there's a whole efficiency to that too. There's a cost efficiency from a marketing standpoint and from all these different things where, you know, it costs more to get customers than it does to, you know, to retain them, in that way. So you can kind of get into that, community can do that. So, as far as the competitive advantage, again, we could probably spend a whole episode just on that. But I mean, I can imagine if and I've worked with, and I've been a customer. I am a customer, right, of other products, and I've had experiences where a brand either, didn't give me that loyalty or didn't give me the response or the genuineness or intent to engage with me in that way. And it didn't feel good, and I was like, well, why do I give them my money, or my time? I certainly want to talk about them. If I'm going to talk about them, it's not going to be positive, like that's the case. But if, then I've had experiences where I go online or I engage in a certain way that's like community, centric or whatever. And they're, very helpful, and then I get to interact with their customers, and we're building relationships, and especially when you buy something new. Like I bought some new things recently, and some of those companies didn't introduce me to their community. I had to find it myself. And I thought that was really interesting too, because I was like, man, if you have a community as a company, like I would think that would be really one thing, like when somebody buys your products or is engaging right before they buy, that you're going to want to tell them about your company, so like all these things, if you think about them, like they're part of that competitive advantage, they're part of that, building that trust, building that relationship, building that loyalty, and that advocacy that makes it worth it. And again, if you think about all that, it's really like the risk is, it seems smaller and smaller the more you think about it. Doesn't mean it's not risky. It doesn't mean you don't have things in place to protect you against risk. Because I always suggest that leaders know what they're getting into. We all, I guide leaders with protocols to like, hey, if this happens, you do this. If that happens, you do that, and so that you're mitigating risk. You're not eliminating it, because some things happen, right? I've seen crazy things happen in online communities, but they're always, they never have outweighed the benefits of doing that. And then there's like co-creation, and the competitive advantage of that. You talk about collaboration, and then there's, another buzzword is the co-creation, the ability to engage with your customers in a way that allows them to have a voice in the development of the product. And I don't know what's more engaging than, allowing somebody who's bought your products to help design the future products,
Man,
and have,
you're in my wheelhouse, dude. Like you're in my head.
Have that, have that opportunity to do that, right? I mean, I felt that before. I've gone online and I've submitted a request, or like, hey, I wish this would do this next time. Can you get this into the roadmap or the product development cycle or something like that? And then I see them, moves through the little, I know that my voice has been heard, and all of that. So I think that's, that's co-creation, and like that is it's the present for the companies that get it today, but certainly the future for those companies that haven't got on that bandwagon yet, that haven't really like got that spark. And there's still time, right? I mean, we're still pretty early in the stages of like many companies really understanding and really embedding community into their into their business operations. But right, I mean, it sounds something you'd want to do as from a competitive advantage, right?
Man, you're in my wheelhouse. So many things you said. I mean, so like the word that came to mind was like almost immediately, like when I think of reviews, when you're talking about, business. Yep. And the Shed Business experiences this quite often. We talk about how valuable are reviews, how valuable are referrals. I mean, I say all the time, like, it's important for me to do a good job with anyone I work with, because to me, they become the best salesperson you never hired. I mean, they will advocate for your product if you do a really, really good job. And no one trusts anybody more than someone who is unbiased and given a fair review of your product or the services that you offer. So it's like incredibly imperative that we do a good job first. Not that we get massive amounts of customers, but that we do one customer a really good job until it turns into two. instead of trying to get 15 and do a terrible job, because we know that word spreads really fast, right? With reviews, customers tell people about their bad experiences, rarely share their good experiences unless they're just so nice that they just can't wait to tell the rest of the world about it. So you've got to create those customer advocates for you, but they become the best salespeople ever. And I wanted to say this, like the user interface of your communication bubble is my favorite user interface. I understand the way you talk, communicate. You are such a good, effective communicator, or we're just like-minded, so much so that what you're talking about makes perfect sense to me. And we think a lot alike. I'm not sure, but everything that you're saying, I'm listening now. I can't wait to get your book whenever it comes out. And yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll do like a follow-up if you're available or willing at some point, episode even, but I talk specifically about it. But I just love the way you're breaking down the conversation. And to me, that's all about being an effective communicator.
Introducing the Real Steel Portable Barn Door Press. You can use it to assemble your doors using truss connector plates to create strong, straight doors. The truss plates are kept in place by using our precision spring plate system, the same system as used on our truss press. Standard size truss plates are 2x4. Other options are available. Air cylinders are used to push the door together before the hydraulic cylinders push the plates into the door. This makes it easy to place your pieces of wood into the machine and assure a nice square door. 2 pins on either side of each of the vertical braces allow an easy and precise fit every time. There are 2 sets of 3 press stations on one rail. This allows for 3 stations to move in and out while remaining perfectly in line with each other. The stations also slide back and forth on each rail for different lengths of doors. You can make door widths ranging in size from 33 inches to 48 inches with a maximum length door of 76 inches. We can accommodate nearly all of your needs when it comes to different sizes. The hydraulic power unit has a 10-gallon steel hydraulic fluid tank with a 3,000 PSI 2-stage pump. The 2-stage hydraulic pump makes for a 4 to 5 second cycle time. An in-tank filter and a return line filter helps keep your hydraulic fluid clean and long-lasting. The electronic control panel allows you to operate all the air and hydraulic controls from a safe distance. A 2-handed safety system is used to provide a safe, efficient operating method. The unit is powered by a 3-phase 7.5 horsepower motor, complete with controls. A single-phase motor is optional as well. Contact us at realsteel.com or call Darren at 570-713-0665. Real Steel, production machines for the wood industries.
We have all kinds of questions. I know we're 40 minutes in, but I'll ask a few questions if that's okay. And then you can just kind of give your thoughts, because my opinion seems to be that if you're in sales, and this is where communication really became an important thing for me, is because when I worked in sales, I wanted to be the best communicator that I could. The podcast was, for the purpose of trying to be vulnerable and let people know me, because some of the industry is very competitive, and you lose your competitive advantage if you don't have anything to new or so. For me, it was like the long game. I know that working with some people in some capacities is more so about building community with them, so that eventually I might have the opportunity to work with them. But being generous just for the sake of being strategic isn't really generous, isn't? I shared something recently and I kind of stole that quote from what I saw somebody share through social media recently. I reshared something where someone said, shout out to those who are being nice without it being a strategy. Shout out to those who are trying, it's such a cool thought, but I'm going to give you some of these questions just so, I guess what I'm saying is a salesperson in the shed industry could be a salesperson in anything. A lot of things are going to cross-reference. What you're going to talk about here could be effective for leaders in the shed industry, even though it might not be asked with a shed-specific thought in mind. But I just want to ask you a couple questions and let you ad-lib on that if you don't care. What does it mean to you to be a community-first company?
Yeah, great question. And I love how you're calling out there before you ask the question about, these generally applicable concepts. Because that's what I'm hoping, leaders to understand is that, whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in customer success or, technical support or product development, like whatever, HR, legal, IT, whatever it is, there is an element of the community first mindset that is applicable. And then from there, you can get into the idea of like what that means for you as an individual, meaning like, how do I use this online community in my daily work? How do I use the data coming from the community in my work as a sales professional, right? Because sometimes sales professionals, they might not directly engage in the community. Like you're not going to sell directly in like an online environment necessarily, because it can seem kind of weird and forced. But as a sales professional, you should be aware that you have an online community, and you should be using the concepts and the mindset behind that in how you're engaging with customers, all prospecting, all these things. So the community first mindset, it applies to, it applies to all of those in that way. But community first company, like, what does that mean? It means there's a set of principles that I lay out. I do this in the book so that when you read it, you kind of understand like, what's Chris talking about? Like, what does this mean? And it starts at the top with, having an understanding of what community is, a group of people coming together with shared purpose, shared values, and creating, sometimes you call them artifacts, but you're creating something together. You're creating a moment. You're creating, products. You're creating, you're helping each other in that way. So that's like, and you're creating a sense of belonging with that among that audience. So if you understand that as a company first, and then you want to take everything that means from the ideas of community and belonging, and you put that as the top priorities of your company, your mission, vision, values. Like that's number one. Like that's a quality. The second part is that you have an intent, to integrate this within your company, and that you make it part of, if it's part of your mission, vision, values, then that makes it easier to do these other things, which is your understanding that it needs to be embedded into business operations and your customer experience. You need to have somebody in your executive or leadership suite, that is either tasked with that, making sure that community stays important, and there's specific projects, resources going to doing that. That could mean, setting up like a center of excellence, where the company and, whoever interfaces with customers or whoever interfaces with staff, that there's a centralized, way that community is trained on and things like that. And then the second piece is that you're actively measuring the results of that, because there's a lot of companies that launch communities, and then they kind of hope and maybe pray, like not in a bad way. I'm just saying, like you're out there going, well, I hope this works.
Yeah.
In a business setting, that's not good, right? Like that, you should be measuring things, especially community. But for whatever reason, throughout the history of community getting embedded into companies and leadership's understanding of community, the idea of measuring community has always been a hard thing, because it's like it can be kind of soft, right? Or can be kind of like, oh, it's relationships. How do you measure relationships? Well, there's ways now in 2023 and beyond where we have data capabilities, with the online platforms and the way that they've advanced, and we have different models that you can use to do that. So a community first company is intent on measuring and storytelling. What I mean by storytelling is actively sharing the successes of the community across the customer base, and then internally. So when you have a community win, when you have a customer who had success within your community, you're sharing that, you're capturing that, and then you're sharing that across, and that you're intent on doing those things. And then, there's other aspects, but I mean, those are the big ones, just being able to, actively integrate it into your company, making part of your business operations, and just, being intent. And then the other thing too, and this is kind of where, I mentioned this earlier, about understanding that community, being community first is like it's a long game. You know, it's something that you can't microwave it. You know, you can't, it's not, another analogy I always use is like, it's not fast food. Don't get me wrong. I love a good fast food restaurant once in a while, but I would prefer to, like a good cooked meal that has, fine dining or something that's taken time to do that. You know, the chef has learned how to cook real good. The guest list has been curated, and everybody's there and it's intent. And then with that, so it's like a long game. It's like a fine meal. That's what community is. So being community first means, like, again, you're understanding that, you're intent on that, and you're measuring that. So those are the things I get into the book. And I've, as I've been writing it, I've talked with other leaders who are community first champions at their companies, so that there's examples for that, because it's hard. Like, I mean, it's hard to do this as a leader. There's a lot of pressures, to not be community first, and there's a lot of reasons like to not do it. Right, the market. Sometimes, there's just different pressures, to perform, to show numbers, and building community and showing results sometimes can seem at odds. But I can tell you this, that the leaders that are intent and that are courageous in that mission, they've never told me, oh, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I didn't, they're like, man, it was hard, Chris, like you said it would be, but I'm glad, and then they're sustaining. So I try to capture a lot of those stories in there, in the book, and have that be something that, leaders who are either moving along their community first journey, or they're just getting started and they need some validation, or they need some examples of like what this looks like.
I just love your thoughts on like being intentional, and you use that word pretty seamlessly, doing things with intent. Yet another cliche saying that stands the test of time is the best of intentions, right? I had the best of intentions, because it's, it's not, we're coming up on Christmas. It's not the gift. It was the intention, right? It was the thought. It was the, so like, I love how you're talking.
That thought that counts.
That into community. And
get ready for a sales revolution. Introducing Making Sales Simple, a complete online training course that unleashes the power of sales mastery, anytime, anywhere, on any device. Designed to transform anyone into a shed selling success, Making Sales Simple guides you through the entire sales cycle, from the moment a customer steps onto the lot all the way through the crucial art of closing the deal. But that's not all. Our course equips you to expertly handle follow-ups, how to advertise your lot on social media, and supercharge your sales like never before. Enroll your sales team in the game-changing Making Sales Simple training course and witness a remarkable boost in sales right on the lot. Do you have a large team of salespeople? Manage and monitor each one through the sleek admin panel. Track their progress, dive into quiz results, and ensure they're not just learning, but mastering their newfound sales skills in real-world scenarios. Join our happy customers and witness your shed lots transform into thriving hubs. Sign up your entire team today. Unlock big savings with the code SGSAVE, because your team's success deserves nothing less.
So a lot of business guys do like proven processes and measurable objectives, and all those things are really cool. And it can become confusing on somebody who's like more, I like to say somebody who's more creative minded, and they're not, you think about their personality. And for anybody who does any of like the personality assessments, you'll learn pretty quickly who you are, because they'll be pretty consistent, usually from one to the next, in theoretically kind of showing you a little bit about who you are and how you just like are to other people, how you come across to other people. For me, I know kind of who I am and where my strengths are. So like, I don't try to go tell somebody who's good at their strengths what to do. Right. And that's where confusion can come in as a leader. Sales is a perfect example. We've said it a million times. We'll say it a million more, probably. Taking your best salesperson, making them your sales manager, maybe not the best thing to do. Maybe they're not an effective communicator. Maybe they're just a good salesperson. And that's not anything wrong with that, because they're going to continue to try to sell even once they become they're going to be who they are. They're not going to become all of a sudden a leader of people. They're going to be, you know, a good salesperson. And there's nothing wrong with being a good salesperson. I hope I didn't offend someone with that statement by any means. But you just, and the only way to really do that is to kind of be able to look at a grand picture of sort of all of your team. And that's where, you know, culture, it was culture 10 years ago or 5 years ago. That was the buzzword for a good solid 5 years, right? Culture and building culture. I'll ask one more question and let you kind of give your thoughts on it. But there's so many good questions to ask. I'm telling you, me and you could talk forever. What does success look like, and how do companies measure success? How do you know when you've arrived? How do you know what success looks like? How would you measure that to say, we've implemented these community first processes and here's the results of them? How do they look back and measure that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say first that you know, everybody's going to define success differently for themselves, right? Like some, you know, depending on your values, depending on who you are and are as a company or as a leader, like you're gonna say, like, well, I think this is successful. So I guess from that standpoint, the individual and the company gets to define success at some level. But if you're intent on being a community first company and you want to know what success looks like for that, there's a whole host of things that we would do, and you know, a company would look for, you know, and a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about trust, you know, that you can, you know, take all your these community driven initiatives that I talk about in the book about, you know, embedding in the customer experience, embedding it into, you know, your satisfaction scores, embedding it, all these different things. I always make sure that, you know, there's metrics, so you can know what your success is. Because you're running a business, you need to be able to, you know, show that what you've invested in is giving you value, is giving you return, right? The ROI. I don't think that's the first time we actually mentioned that whole phrase yet, but it often comes up a lot where, well, what's the ROI of this, Chris? Yeah. You know, like what am I going to get on this? You know, and I always like to define, like, if I get asked that question, then, you know, well, are we talking ROI or are we talking value? Because those are two different things in that way. Leaders who are really community centric and community driven, who quote unquote get it, you know, they know that it's valuable, and they don't always need to see a return on ROI in an ROI sense, you know, on that. I always suggest it, because if you're any kind of, especially a publicly traded company or any kind of company, you want to see how this experience that you're creating online, or a community that you're building in person, or whatever it is, that's time, that's money, you know, that you're investing. You want to see what you're getting out of that, right? So I always suggest, you know, what are your business KPIs, you know, and then there are ways to connect those KPIs in the business side with the data from the community. You know, I've helped companies build, you know, cost impact models, so that they know that if they build community among their customers and allow their customers to help each other in like an online forum, that is going to impact and deflect calls from a support call, you know, perspective. They could potentially save millions of dollars, you know, doing that. And then on the top line revenue piece, you know, if you're judging success and your success target is based off of, you want to keep your customers, and I don't know who doesn't want to keep their customers, but if you do, and you want to use community to track that success, then you want to be able to take, again, nitty gritty example is taking your community data and attaching it and merging it, analyzing it with your business data, and to see how many of your customers that you currently have, how many of them are engaged, and what's the retention and renewal rates of those customers who are not engaged in your community, and the impacts of that. I've seen data that shows, you know, unequivocally that it's, you know, and what hands down that any of the customer bases that are involved in some kind of online community, they have higher retention rates, and they have lower churn rates with that. So, and those customers who are engaged, they tend to go deeper into the products, and then they become advocates. So all of these are success criteria. Like if you're going to judge success within the community, one thing you don't want to do is just judge success based off of by the community itself. You need to go that next step. And this is what I explain. I have a tool in my book called the 3 E's, which is a kind of a system centered around making sure that you are putting community in your experience, that you're enabling your staff, and that you're evaluating your success. So those are like the 3 E's. And success is like in the evaluation piece. And it involves taking community data and attaching it to your business data. Because even in like 2023, there's a lot of companies that have, CRMs, or they have marketing data over here, and then they have their community data over here. That's right. And they don't talk to they don't talk to each other. And I'm like, ooh, that's one thing we could work on, and getting that, because that's still something that needs to happen. And that's one way how you gauge success. So if you're a leader who really wants to see, your success is driven by, numbers, or, seeing impact on the bottom or top line revenue with that, or costs. And then that's important. If you just want to see, are your customers satisfied, is satisfaction going up based off your products, then you look at all the conversations happening in the community, and you look at, satisfaction. You tie some of that data back to your satisfaction scores, that you're doing. But one thing you don't want to do is keep your community data apart from your business data, because it's really hard to, you're going to make it almost nearly impossible to really judge success in like a advanced way. And that's community first. Like that's a definition that I explain, in the book about, like, if you're a community first company, you got to check that box. Then that box is making sure that your community data and your business data are together, and that your business goals and your community goals are one and the same. And that they're not, separate.
100% why, like I often say, like my ministry, my family, my work, it all just kind of goes together, man. I don't really know how to separate the two and put them into, this block over here or this block over there. I am who I am within all of those like capacities. If I'm with family, like, work just happens in conversation. When I'm at work, family happens. It just comes up in the conversation. Ministry and faith, and talking about the things that are super important to us, that kind of like set the foundations for our life and the trajectory of like what we're trying to accomplish. And you talked about it with sort of that ROI skit there a little bit, with just thinking about the boss. If you've ever been in any board meetings, that like the battles happen in the board meetings between like the money side and then like the operations side. And this guy's like, well, of course we're doing it because of this. And then this lady's like, well, it's got to make sense financially. And, like if you've ever been in all that, that's what's awesome. Listen, I usually give an hour goes by so quick with these things, especially when the conversation goes easy. I definitely want to follow up. First thing I want to do is like, for those who want to get your book, where will they find it? The name of it. We'll try to share a link. I know that it's still forthcoming, but maybe we can share a picture of it, and in a later episode, maybe I can just kind of remind people once it launches. But share just a little bit on that, if you would, real quick.
Yeah. I appreciate you allowing me to talk about it. I'm really excited about it, and I'm excited that I really want to help leaders do what you and I've been talking about this whole time. So they can go to communityfirstcompany.com/free, and that'll give you an opportunity to download a checklist and also get on the list for updates about the book. And then you can reach out to me there. You'll be on a list for that. Again, I love helping leaders, whether it's, coming and talking about this, or, I love being able to lead workshops or what have you, in that it's just really important stuff, to be able to talk about this and go deep with leaders. So, but that's where you can get more. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can look me up, Chris Catania, on LinkedIn, and find out more information. I'm always posting stuff there, and, sharing tips and all that stuff.
It's perfect. I always try to give everybody an opportunity at the end to sort of turn the mic around. So do you have a question or two for me? Anything, nothing's off limits, faith, family, communication, podcasting, whatever you want to do, just anything that comes to mind, top of mind, so I can be your guest for a moment.
This is great. It reminds me of that. Like I'm on my podcast where I'm always asking concert fans on, the live fix there. Like, hey, what's your favorite show? So what's your most memorable concert moment?
I don't know that I have a most memorable. I have things that stick out in my head. I remember going to Opryland, which is now where the Opry Mills Mall sits in Nashville, Tennessee. It used to be Opryland. And I remember we went and watched a Tanya Tucker concert. It's a country musician. And I don't know why. For some reason, I remember that one being one of the first concerts we went to sort of as a family. But there's nothing specifically that sticks out about it other than the family atmosphere. My parents would later get divorced, and that was kind of a cool thing just as a young boy while everybody was still together. I actually had a fairly cool experience recently where I went to, you might have seen like the viral video of like Oliver Anthony where he writes the song about rich men south of Richmond. It's a very conservative, kind of thought and movement about not being a fan of Washington elites or whatever. And yeah, I'm probably gonna get all the hate mail now for far right and this and that and another, ain't I? I went, but what I found interesting about the guys, whenever he was talking, I found his conversation to be more interesting because he seemed like me. He didn't seem like a rounded performer. Like he wasn't someone who had been like engaged in the industry already and knew what to do and how to say. And like, he was very real. And I just tend to think that in conversation, that's what people are looking for. They're looking for real, performance is great. But even my podcast, a lot of times when people say, well, we're afraid to come on there, we'll say something silly or sound silly or audibly will sound, some kind of way. And I'm like, I got to be honest with you guys. You sound that way to everybody, every day, all day now. So like, nothing's going to change by being on here, plus we have editing. You don't have that in real life. So, that going to that concert was kind of cool because I kind of felt like that was a not so much rags to riches moment, but I got to work a lot of concerts at the casino. I'm going to give you my most memorable. It just came to me. Cool. The most memorable was Wayne Newton came to our little bitty casino in our little bitty town, Mr. Las Vegas. And I used to have to come in and set up behind the scenes. And he was there hanging out with the crew that was putting everything together for the evening. He had actually stayed at someone's house and opposing to stay at the actual casino itself. He wanted to have a relationship and conversation with the people who had invited him there. So he stayed with like whoever the guest booking person was. They got to hang out with him and wow. He came back and there was a lady who had brought in some, I think it was a leftover cake from her son's birthday or cookies or something like that. And he was like, hey, my daughter's here. Can she have one? And he ate some and just like sat back there and really was like the most down to earth guy. And I was like, there's no way. This is nothing like the guy I expected. He was just the coolest guy on earth, Wayne Newton. And I was like, I didn't know I was a fan. Became a fan because he was more personable than probably 95% of the people who are less known than him that were performing. They were way, way more high maintenance. He was extremely down to earth. So that was probably my favorite. I went long on my answer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, that's classic. Yeah. I haven't heard anybody talk about Wayne Newton in a long time. As far as that, when I ask him, when I ask him a concert question with that. So no, that's awesome. Yeah. You must have experienced a lot of, experiences in the unique experiences in the casino, and
for sure you meet a lot of people
as far as music goes. Like the performing, performance, live performance goes. And then the other question I want to ask you was, what's changed the most during our conversation about your ideas, regarding community, being community first. Like, what's your biggest insights and takeaways that you're walking away with?
Until I read your book, which I'm really looking forward to, I think really affirmation is a lot about what I received. I love the idea of building building community. So I'm looking for like that aha moment that you talked about as I read the book. That's sort of like that paradigm shift that changes like how you look at a whole aspect of things. I think I felt more affirmation today about just continuing to be. See, I'm always super self-conscious because, you know, having a platform to speak to people, well, that's really awesome. But then, you know, you have to respect that because it's not really yours. I know that sounds really strange, but, so like for me, I'm always afraid to make myself vulnerable to the audience because it might seem like salesy because, you know, we offer products and we offer services, not so much products. So then it becomes, I get super self-conscious whenever I'm like, oh no, I'll just sound salesy if I become vulnerable and put myself out there. Like for me, Chris, I'm accountable to my guests, to my listeners and the guests, but to the audience. Like if my audio is not matching my video, that's it. That's imperative. So like for me, whenever I go out and meet with people, I want to be who I am whenever they listen to me on their radio. They're giving me an hour or two of their week each week. And I'm like, gosh, you know, that's really important to like, I like to laugh, joke, cut up, but I like for things to be educational. I just hope that they walk away at the end of the day and say my conversation, you know, that we had with people was good and enlightening and made their day better. So for me, it was affirmation really about what I'm doing. But I can't wait to read the book. I really want to read the book now, and I really want to do a follow-up episode at some point, maybe a year from now or who knows what, on the book when it comes out. But yeah, I'm excited about that. So nothing changed for me, but I think it gives me more affirmation to keep doing what I'm doing. There's some power in being vulnerable. I mean, well, biblically that's even truthful, right? You know, you know, when you become less of you and more of him, you know, or focus more on him, you know, then it's you kind of understand that opportunity exists in that way. So, but that's scary. That's super scary because as a guy growing up, you're taught all the other stuff. You're taught throw some dirt on it, quit crying, shut up, hold your feelings in, all that good stuff, you know, like good old Midwestern kid. Anyway, it's like, well, I don't want to go around being a crying mess, but at the same time, just like being vulnerable enough to cry in front of people. That would have got you beat up when you was young. What are you talking about? But as an adult, you're like, man, we're in this new generation where like my dad's generation, that's just how they like, you know, you don't want the pendulum to swing too far. You don't want to, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like, communication's a thing that most men just didn't do growing up. My dad was a terrible communicator. So I envy those who like talk about their fathers and the conversations and talking. And I'm like, man, my dad's 80 and I'm just now getting that because we didn't have that growing up. So there was a whole generation there that was taught to suppress all of that. Don't communicate. I mean, that's why divorces happen. I'm convinced that's why my parents' divorce happened, because we couldn't lay down our ego or our pride to have communication, you know, and as you can see, the lack of it broke up the community of the family, because there was an unwillingness to talk. So I'm going really long now, aren't I? But I love the conversation. It's just easy to have.
No, it's been great. Yeah.
Like I said, I don't mind putting myself out there to be vulnerable like that. The more people know of me, the more they know who they're working with. So that's why I don't mind having the conversation about me sometimes, but I try to keep it guest focused most of the time and what they're trying to accomplish. So thank you for those questions. They're very, very, very awesome questions and thought-provoking questions that I'll chew on for a long time. People should get your book, man. I love it. I want to make sure I get one just as soon as it comes out and do a follow-up with you. If leaders are looking for somebody to focus on the community of their company, give Chris a call, reach out to him. We'll put some links in our newsletter. If you don't get our newsletter, let me know. Email me, info@shedgeek.com. Just go to our website. Just figure it out somehow. Give me a call, text, shout, whatever you got to do, and we'll get you on the newsletter. And there's opportunities there for blogs, and if anybody wants to write on those, more than welcome to. So Chris, this has been great. I appreciate you taking the time to do this today, and it's been pretty awesome. I enjoyed this way more than I initially expected to. So
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been awesome. I love the conversation, and thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, this is Mo Lunsford here in sunny North Carolina. And we just want to say thank you for listening to the show.